welcome once again to Postcard. The man is with us. He's moved his location from the top of his establishment to a floor down at least, and he thinks it's going to make him look even more handsome. It's not worked. Leigh, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, we've left the upper echelons or the upper floors of our penthouse apartments in this COVID-ridden mountain city, and we've moved back down to the shed.
The shed. The shed.
Because it's dark. Look, it's dark. It's 3 o'clock in the, it's not even 3 o'clock in the, whatever time it is, wherever you are at this moment of listening or watching this, it's dark.
I know your beloved has sent a photograph of the frost. Oh my goodness me. No, can't do frost.
It's lovely. It really is lovely. Get it in your drinks. Get it in your gin and tonics, right? It's gorgeous. Mountain fresh. Yeah, honestly. Now it's snowing. But the snow's...
No, you can keep it. This till next April. No, sir, not for me. Listen, Leigh, we've got... well, no, let's start with the problem. This is wind up Leigh Banks' time, I've got to say. And this is about the British press, which is infinitely better, and we say this often, than the US press, which is totally on a national basis of one leaning, and it's that way. Is that the left? Yes. Well, it is on my monitor here. So we've got a real problem in the US. We've got less of a problem in United Kingdom because roughly it's split and you make your own mind up. But
I just talk for a second?
Yes.
May I just tell the ladies and gentlemen and everybody else, I have no idea what you're firing at me at this moment. I'm sitting here like a sitting duck.
Get ready to duck. Well, as a hard-bitten journalist for centuries, we have a problem. And whether you've noticed it or not, certainly I have and many others have, in that there is a distinct difference between the journalism of the left and the journalism of the right. Example, traditionally the Guardian as an example on one side, and maybe the Telegraph or whatever on the other side. And there is a difference, because I find it very difficult to get a different opinion from the lefty papers to the righty papers. Now, if Boris makes a boob, then the righty papers will tell him and say that is not on, Boris. Your backbenchers are revolting in the nicest possible way, and you've got to do something about it. But you will not find that in the dear old Guardian or the Mirror. They stick to the line. And even the dear old Mirror, how it survived during the Corbyn years, covering up, dare one say, for Corbyn and his true feelings about the Jewish problem. But they did. But it appears to me, Leigh, that the left are unbending. They are classically no platforming. Now, you're not going to agree with that. Go on, have a go.
Bit like the Republicans in America. It's well, you know, it's I can't agree, really. First of all, the Daily Mail's one of the biggest Tory papers about. It has been for the last, well, for as far as I can remember. And if in fact you get an agreement between the political posturing of different aspects of the press, then that means that really that's incredible freedom of the press, because they from each organization agree with the political situation or agree about the political situation in this country or the world, and stand up and be counted for it. That's what the press is there. There is no delineation between the press and which can't be broken. We can go either side depending on what our conscience says. And that actually is the conscience of the editor. It's nothing to do with who owns the paper, nothing to do with that. All papers are privately owned and are owned by entrepreneurs and very rich people. But they give over the control of that paper to editors. And the editor, he might be a Tory, he might be. See, if you think, let's take an example of a paper that I worked on, and everybody laughs. Oh, how we laugh when we say it. The Daily Star. Now, that I was there at the inception of the Daily Star. And if you think, after the first editor who wrote a story about somebody, published a splash in the first edition of somebody who'd fallen down some stairs in Blackpool, and we all sat there going, how's that going to sell newspapers? Then we had Derek Jameson, a very good friend of mine, and my mentor, the man who taught me everything I really know about newspapers, who was loud, brash, he was a perfect tabloid journalist, and but basically was a Tory. Now he put a Tory point of view on the Daily Star, quite a right-wing one, and the sales of the Daily Star went insane. Rob Liddell, who took over a few years ago at the Daily Star, is a mishmash of political extremes. He's right-wing, he's left-wing, he's every wing that you can think of. And actually, he's improving the Daily Star now. It's doing really well. It's a really readable paper again. The Daily Mail, very right-wing, very, very right-wing. People say it's racist. I don't believe it's racist. It has a point of view. The Sun, very right-wing again, but also leans strongly to the left. Now, The Guardian itself is a left-wing trendy paper. It always has been, always will be. It's basically run by fey people who sit there smoking long cigarettes and drinking lattes at press conferences and getting all upset about everything in the world that they don't agree with. Now, again, that's a beautiful, colourful way for the British press to operate. And the British press, I think the split, I can't remember, I don't have the details in front of me, but I will not be very far out at all. The British press is split about 60-40 towards being right-wing. Now, we are a right-wing country. We are a right-wing country.
Well, you'd never guess that, Leigh, because things have changed radically. As an example, there's a certain lady that has retired ungracefully from The Guardian and has written a long, long piece. And she enjoyed her time there. Well, she fitted in. But one, and it's a long article, why she retired, one very short phrase she used, The Guardian has become a cult, and I could not survive the cult. Now, 300 and odd journalists there, and she happened to say something that was a little bit questioning the trans movement. Nothing dynamic, but it was questioning it. My goodness me, they came against her. Everybody came against her. She had to leave. Now, I know there's a story behind every story, but, you know, if people want to see a different newspaper, as you mentioned, it's The Guardian. It's a pain. It's got to appeal for money at the bottom of every article it puts online. Why should it be appealing for money? Does it not earn enough from the advertisers?
Well, it's a trust. It's a trust. And there is different, it's a private trust. It was part of the Manchester Evening News Trust and operated in that for decades. And as such, there are rules surrounding operating as a trust. Now, The Guardian's never been a major selling newspaper. Some of its journalism is excellent. Some of it's actually brilliant. But it's never been a major seller. I don't know what the sales figures are now, but they've got to be less than 500,000. And I can actually check later on and find out exactly. So it appeals to people to pay for its news. Now, really, there's nothing wrong in that. People used to pay for newspapers. Now, it's street sales are still being paid for. But more and more newspapers and journalists like me have to go online to put things right. And it's notoriously difficult to get paid when you work online. I do all right because of various things that I do. So the Guardian, yeah, it appeals for money. You know, it's charities do.
Well, they're begging letters. Why don't all newspapers do it? No, it's just the Guardian.
Yeah, it's well, that's it. Because, like I say, its format in the past was as a trust, and its sales aren't very good, and it's perfectly reasonable. When your sales have dropped on the streets, then you have to try and find a way of compensating for that.
Or you can change your journalism and think, oh, it's not working. These are not people that are buying newspapers.
No, it's not right. It's not right. The Telegraph. You can't read the Telegraph online unless you pay them money.
You have to pay a lot of money, and over the pond, of course, you try and get the Wall Street Journal, less than $40 a month, which is a lot of money. It's difficult.
There you have it. Then that's what happens. A lot of newspapers want you to be to subscribe to them and give them money. That's the way it is. Now, the lady in connection we're talking about, she was an academic. She worked in academia, and I can tell you from a bitter experience, and from not so bad experience, but just let's stick at bitter, for a newspaper editor to take on academics, people are university students. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's a totally different attitude. Newspaper people like me have to be streetwise. I'm very streetwise. I was brought up the same as you in the same sort of area, and you know how rough that upbringing was. And I've transferred that into my working life. I can go into anywhere. I can mix with kings and I can mix with paupers. Now, this lady, in concern, I'm not attacking her. She got a job on The Guardian as a columnist. Now, that doesn't mean you're a journalist. That means you're a columnist. That doesn't mean you can go on the streets and report on wars and whatever else, or go to courts, high courts, and know what the law says. It means you're a columnist. And she was taken on to write about women's issues, which was fine. She felt that she was being asked to write too much about kitchen sinks and things like that. Now, I don't agree with that. I don't think she was particularly made to do that kind of thing. And she had a bee in her bonnet about certain issues. And one at one point was the fluidity of transgenderism. Now, that's fine. She has a political view. She has her own view on that. But she works for The Guardian. And the editor didn't stop her writing what she wanted to write, or the sub-editors in this case, actually.
Well, I understand that it was redacted, quite a lot of stuff she wrote.
That's what you do. That's what you do. That's my job. That's part of my job. I'm a sub-editor. I'm an editor. I take stuff out of copy. I don't.
But Leigh, when 300 and odd of your fellow journos are suddenly against you, oh,
I can't see that. I can't see that. I know journalists well. We are what is described as a pack. And yeah, there are people who step outside the pack and are ostracized. It's in any kind of job. In any kind of job, it's happened to me. In the past, the last time it happened was with an international news agency. And in fact, they had taken me on to do a job that didn't exist. So they tried to get me to do other jobs. Now, I wasn't that interested in doing these other jobs. I had to make a living. And ultimately, we fell out. Now, it isn't that the other journalist ostracized her. It was the fact that because of the regime, They weren't interested in her. She was a has-been. She was gone. She was done in. She was finished. And
well, you said it yourself, regime. I've used the word cult. Come on, we've got to be more even-handed with our journalism.
Well, no, why? Why have we got to be even-handed? I never understand this. This is a complete fallacy and a complete misunderstanding of what the media is about, particularly newspapers. We don't have to be even-handed. We are political animals. Our newspapers take a political stance, and hopefully what we do, see, there's two tiers. There's loads of tiers to journalism, but let's take the first one. Well, I've just broken my studio.
He means the cardboard box, but go
on. The first job of a newspaper is to report the news. Now, generally, we can't be, for 50 years, 60 years, 100 years even, we have not been able to compete with radio. Radio can be on the air immediately, but you'll find that a radio only gives a little bit of information what's gone on. Like, for instance, I'm trying to think of something that's happened in the last few days. Some of the murders that happened in Britain, radio goes on and says there's been a murder in Croydon, just say. That's it. That's the information you get. We can't beat them. We have a chance now with the internet, but so we go out and we find out what the truth is. What we can, we interview people, we talk to people, we have contacts within the police, and we come out back with a 34-year-old woman was stabbed to death in front of her child, blah, blah, blah.
And then you go one step further and say, it's all because of the Tory ways of treating this kind of a town. If it was in the southeast of England, well, more in the southeast of England, then that would not happen.
If that's what we believe. You see, we don't say that. And again, this is a fallacy. We don't say that. We do in political columns. We do in comments. We do in opinion. But we don't say that. We report on an MP, for instance. An MP said this is because of the Tory government. Now everybody redacts the MP from that story and says, the Daily Mail says it's because of the Tory government. No, the Daily Mail reported what the MP said. Then what the Daily Mail should do, and does mainly, they have to talk to a Labour MP and say, so-and-so says it's because of the Tory government, or vice versa, whichever way they're going. And they have to talk to somebody else, and they come back saying that's a load of rubbish. Then you get a fairness within the story. The problem is newspapers are so old-fashioned now, and people are not generally on the ball about news. They don't see that that's an MP who said that, and it's simply reported. We had a problem last week where we have a problem with now with GCHQ. Now I know we're going to talk about this later, where an organisation has said that they should be investigating the proletariat, the population. Now, the Daily Mail didn't say that. This group did. What happens? Everybody says, GCHQ are investigating the population. So, no, they're not. If you read the story, what's actually happening is a suggestion. And that's what it is. People don't understand news anymore. This woman we're talking about wasn't a news journalist. He objected to having her copy edited. Well, that's fine. Do what I do or did in the past. I've done on a thing. Four occasions. I've not liked the political point of view, the political complexion that the newspaper I've been working for has taken. For instance, I went from the Daily Mail to the Sun because I found the political aspect and the fairness of the reporting far better on the Sun. Now I can hear everybody going up the wall about that. Go and work there and find out what it's like.
My informants told me it's because of page 3, but obviously they were wrong. Seriously.
Page 3, but I stopped after the first one.
While agreeing with you a lot more than I appear to be agreeing with you, there is a great deal of opinion that is confused with news, and let the buyer beware. If you're reading a newspaper, be aware where it's coming from, and sometimes going to. But let's, as you mentioned,
let me just say one last thing on this. If you read a newspaper, then that's fine. Understand what this is about. And let's ask one question directly to you. Why has everybody in the world got a right to a media opinion through social media except the real media? Why does everybody think that because they're on social media, they can say what they want? And yet we are pilloried all the time saying what we want.
Well, somebody, not me, would say to you, there is a good influence of social media because we don't trust the press anymore. We don't trust what we read. We don't trust politicians. At least the ordinary Joe can have a shout. But Leigh, can he? Because there's loads of instances where they are controlling what we can put up there. And as we've hinted about the transgender thing, there has been a film made that has been given to apparently 1,900 schools throughout Britain about the trans movement. The publishers and makers of the film are clearly fed up with a one-way street, and LGBT are very, very strong, and they've been in the schools for quite a long time now giving their version. There is another version, and this film starts off with eminent professors saying the science of transgenderism is this, totally against what the LGBT movement says. But this is science, they say, make up your own mind. There's 2 points of view. Of course, YouTube and co have come along and banned the video. Sorry, that is absolutely wrong, and it's happening all the time, Leigh.
What's happened with YouTube and many forms of social media is that they have been pilloried for for allowing hate speech. And YouTube for many 2-3 decades, I think it's 3 anyway, whatever it is, a couple of decades, have allowed untrammeled racism, hate speech, transgenderism, anything to do with people who are different, to be attacked on their channels. Now they've been taken to task by that, and Donald Trump has done the world a favour by making social media start to take seriously its duty to tell the truth. And so that's why he's been...
That's interesting. That's the first time you've said anything in support of Donald Trump. The Guardian would not go along that line, Leigh. It won't, whether he'd done good or bad, they would say bad. We've passed that part.
That isn't true. That isn't true. They cover the news like any other newspaper, and the news element of what he's done is always covered. Then we have the opinion, which is separate. And the opinion, as a separate entity, is the voice of that organisation. And it stands or falls by its own voice. I'm fairly apolitical, although on here, people don't agree, and maybe I'm not as apolitical.
No, they call you a pinko. Come on, come out with the word.
I'm a left-wing pinko. I don't mind being a left-wing pinko. I don't think I am, actually. I think I'm fair. My job is to go down the line, go down the middle, or lean to which side I believe the truth is on. And if I believe the truth is on the right, then I'm allowed to give that opinion. That's why sometimes, as you will see, a newspaper like The Sun, for instance, when completely behind the Labour Party. When it's been a Tory newspaper since its existence, really, it became a left-wing paper to support what they believed the Labour Party were doing right. Now, they attack Boris Johnson all the time, so does every newspaper. But the news element of what's going on is straight down the line, not the politics, and not the politics is a different thing.
Leigh, that would never happen to the Mirror or the Guardian, and I'll stand by that. They would never have a bit of an aberration.
No, I don't think the Mirror would. No, sorry, I don't think the Guardian would.
No.
I'm filing through my mental files at the moment. I think I can't prove it, but I would just say as an opinion, I think the Mirror have in the past done that. It's a search for truth. It's a search for what is the truth about a matter. And if it's politics, then you have to decide what you believe the political stance is. And if you get it wrong, like the woman we were talking about, then you won't be liked. But the editor also, and his sub-editors and his news editors, all have the right to alter a reporter's or a columnist's copy to say what they believe is right. It can be done for simple reasons. This woman might have written 1,000 words and she had 350 words space. Now, a good journalist like me will write 350 words for that space and pack everything in. I know so many journalists who say, right, the news editor comes to you, or the chief sub or whoever, says, give us 250 words on that. And by the time it arrives, you've got 750. And you go say, look, I said 250. And then it becomes a bit of a newsroom now where the whoever it is, the news editor, chief sub, or somebody says, well, in whatever colourful language you want to use, forget it, I'll do it. And so your job then is to cut out 500 words from that copy.
The art of praising is very, very difficult. It's much easier the other way. Listen, we've got to move on. GCHQ, you mentioned.
You started it.
I did. Told you I'd wind him up. There you go. Anyway, if we're thinking about our noble MI6 mainly, they've been given a lot of money. It's not only for frigates, battleships, aircraft carriers. There's a lot of it going into spying. Let's call it what it is. For years, we know China and Russia have been hacking various sites, and we allegedly, although I don't believe this, have done nothing. We just catch them from time to time. Well, now it's all-out war. Russia and China, beware, because we're going proactive on the offensive. We're going to do what you've been doing to us for years. About time, isn't it, Leigh?
Well, it is, yeah. What's the point of? You see, we have the most transparent world in Britain that you can have. You know, why are the road signs to our secret spy base? You know, GCHQ, turn left 1 mile. You know, things like that. It's all right. GCHQ is a very strange place. I've done quite a lot of stories about GCHQ. I've been there on a regular basis. And it's quite true that what GCHQ does, it arranges parties for itself in Hollywood. It's taken its staff to Disneyland. It goes to the pub and has meals and does all these strange things that are just lovely. It's nice to work there. You know what the average pay at GCHQ is? £26,000 a year. Now, is that really the price that James Bond would have worked for? I think not. What about Jason Bourne? He's not going to work for £26,000. GCHQ is a joke. Always has been and always will be. But what it did do, apart from breaking that code thing with the Germans, it's now been asked to do its own job. It's been asked to get on with it. Join with MI6. join with everything else. No, and this problem we've got now. That's fine as far as I'm concerned, but what I think is disgusting is that GCHQ and MI6 are potentially going to monitor what jobs you apply for, where you go in the evening. Now, this all started, if you remember, with CCTV, and we were watched and we were monitored, and everybody says, yeah, really good, you can catch a murderer, you can catch a killer, you can catch a thief through this, but we're all being monitored. Now, this monitoring, particularly at this stage of the UK development, the COVID lockdown, the fear of mass control of the population, all of a sudden our spy agency says, we're going for the Russians, but we're also going for you. Oh, terrible.
Yeah, we're coming round at Christmas and we'll count the heads and we'll see how many families, frightening prospect they could do. But that is madness in itself, Lee, isn't it? Because why can't we be more patient and say, well, in 3 months, the jabs will be here. For the sake of 3 months, why kill your granny?
Very good statement. First made, I think, by the Metro. And the Metro had written a story about a bloke who said, who was landlord of a pub, and he said, why am I allowed to go at any time of the day into my local supermarket where there are 300, 400, 500 people, and I'm allowed to meander around the shelves, put my head in anything, have a look at some buy fish fingers, and go there, have a chat with somebody I know, and yet nobody's allowed in my pub.
Yeah, not living in the real world, we all know that when we get friendly in pubs, especially at certain times in the evening, there are close encounters. And that's how it's spread. It's a distinct argument, that, with respect to this gentleman.
No, but surely that's what, you see, I agree with you, but not now. I don't agree with you now on that, because we are allowed in the next couple of weeks to go to the pub and have a substantial meal and have a drink with that substantial meal. But the reality is the landlord and his staff have now got to act like police and say, right, you've had your meal, you've got to leave. You can't have a second drink. You've got to have your second drink with your meal. Now, if they can police that situation, and let's face it, they've been taking our names and addresses and telephone numbers for the last 6-7 months, why can't they then police that situation where they say, sorry, you're getting a bit close there, mate, not being rude, but it's this COVID problem, and split them up. They've been doing that anyway, so it's only a matter of doing it again.
Well, try Wales if you think England is on steroids. Wales has gone completely potty. I mean, they've locked down everybody now again. So it's like the okie dokie. And our staff, as you know, we have a certain other business interests, don't know where they are. 1 week they can work, then they can't work. And it's utter and complete madness. So, like the Wicked Witch of the North, of course, Uncle Mark of Wales, it's gone power crazily. They've had 2 towns in South Wales showing high numbers, and it's been put over to the rest of Wales, who are showing very low numbers. And let's extend this a bit further. Especially in the southeast of England, people now are going potty, because they come in and they get the fringes of London nicely placed to the leafy lanes in the southeast, usually near the ports of escape to Europe, and they've had counts of 30 odd in every 100,000 cases, where nearer to London it's 500, and they've all been placed in the same bucket. Now they're going potty. I'd go potty if I lived down there. What's the reason behind everybody going into tier 3 and 2?
Well, the reason behind it, and I'm not wearing my Tory hat by saying this, it's just what I've gathered through looking into it, is that if you have a major problem, flood that problem with the cure. Then look at how things are developing and start to retract, take back this mass blanket coverage. You have this mass blanket cure. Boris said yesterday, this isn't forever. This is for a while. And when we see what's happening, we can start lifting bans, we can start lifting moving tiers and everything. So in a way, that makes a lot of sense to me to say, yeah, that's it. You know, if you've got a car, if your car's breaking down, they check everything today, put it on a machine, it checks everything. Then you get to the point where you say, that's what it is. And so you go for that problem, but you've got to do this. Now, whether this is necessary is a different question, totally different question. Is this the mass control factor of every dystopian film that's been made since the 1930s? Has it come true? If you remember, there was a film called, I can't remember what it was called now, something like I Am a Spy. It wasn't called that. But that film was about the fact that iRobot, it was called, iRobot. And that film was about robots taking over the world. There is no doubt robots have taken over the world. And that is where our real fear should lie.
Well, indeed. I've got, moving on, I've got a quote for you from the other side of the pond, of course. And it states boldly that Big Pharma deliberately withheld information of the new vaccines until after the election. Now, with good reason, of course. That good reason being that the Donald has stated on many occasions he's going to have Big Pharma because they're making far too many profits and people are suffering because of it. You can get that pill for 1/10 of the price. Why are you charging 10 times more? They didn't want him back. So the best way of getting him out of the way and perhaps losing 2 or 3% of the vote, I don't know, was announce the savior of the world, i.e. the vaccine, was strangely announced the day after, the 4th. Well, it was hinted on the 4th, it came out on the 5th.
Could be coincidence, could be true. You know, it's one of those things. Big Pharma. If you go to social media and you listen to what's said on social media, everybody is a world expert on what's happening behind the scenes in everything. We have a carpenter on my side who knows everything about politics, knows everything about Big Pharma, knows everything about the government, knows everything about America, and he's basically wrong all the time. Now, I don't know. I have no proof that Big Pharma kept it back. It certainly happened after the election, but that doesn't mean that they deliberately kept it back. It means that there is a possibility of that. I have seen no proof. There are hints and ways that you can draw an opinion on that and come up with that. But then that's an opinion. That's an opinion, and everybody's allowed one.
Well, yes, but there is circumstantial evidence and outright.
Thank you.
Right, we'll stay over the pond for a second because Apple and Amazon are in the doo-doo. And the reason they are is that, well, yes, they're not recycling, they're not repairing, they're throwing away precious computers with precious metals in them. And we are not in a repair society. Now, one of the things we learned coming to Spain many years ago, and it still happens, you can get things repaired here. There's always a carpenter on hand or a plumber. No, don't put a new toilet in there. I'll mend it. I've got some super glue or whatever they do.
Don't sit on it after that.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, we're in the age of throwaway. and it's got obscene in certain Western countries and in the US.
Yeah. And in the UK, really, having said that, I know of an organisation which I'm not going to name because I'm not too sure about it in its straightforwardness. But there are plenty of companies who strip the metals, the precious metals, out of computing. It's very, very similar to the jewellery business, where at the end of the day, in the jewellery business, you don't leave your carpet, you take your carpet with you, and you give it to a firm who releases all the precious metals out of the carpet. And those carpets are worth a fortune. People are already, decades have been stripping out the precious metals in computers, a lot of money in it. There is this throwaway society. The problem is computers are made out of plastic. And what do you do with the plastic? Now, I also know a man who I'm not going to mention again, who has worked for a long time on creating a road surface made out of plastic to get rid of the plastic waste that we have. Now, I think that's brilliant, except then you're paving the world with plastic. You can't get rid of plastic. That's the problem. And that's what Apple and Amazon have come up against. What do we do? What do we do?
Well, science comes to our rescue in a lot of occasions. There is a truly, it's not plastic actually, it's rubber, because rubber tires, of course, are difficult to get rid of. And a British invention is to mix that with the asphalt. And it has a dramatic reduction. It's a little more expensive, not a lot, in tire noise on the road. Here in Marbella, we have a big bypass, 6 lanes. But they put the new surface on those 6 lanes. And people don't need these high fences anymore around the motorway to keep the sound down. The surface is revolutionized, and rainwater just drips off it. You don't get any puddles. So great British invention. Why don't we in the UK put it on our roads? It's buttons extra.
To be honest, and it's only because we keep touching things that I've actually experienced. One of my houses in Britain is next to a main road, and it can be very noisy. Now, the council actually came out and put low noise road surfacing outside a lot of the houses in the village. So we are doing it. The problem is we're not doing enough of it. We should put these road noise surfaces everywhere and pay a little bit extra. If you can pay all this money out we're doing now, we could pay out that for that as well. You're quite right. I think that should be done. But it is being used in Britain, but very sparsely.
I know. And it's dramatic when you drive off the normal road and you hit this special tarmac. What's happened? It's not, you know, isn't it wonderful to have quietness within the car? Never mind shedding it outside. Right. Talking about doo-doo, as we have done, I'm going for DDD, which is Disney doo-doo. Now, they're in literally up to their eyes. The simple reason is some calculate there are 30,000 jobs that they're going to lose because of various reasons. Number one is COVID. People can't go on the rides, etc. But there has been a big revolt against Disney because Disney is the epitome of family viewing. No, it ain't, because they, and we hinted at this at the beginning of the program, they have been targeted by LGBT, and LGBT persons have got in positions of hierarchy. Basically, they're producing films now that are normalizing, inverted commas, relationships that are still under debate. And the public, especially in America, have kicked off big time. Some say up to 30% of people will not go to Disney parks any longer. They don't want preaching at They want a nice experience in the park.
Well, yeah, choose your films then. Choose which films you go and see. If you look at, I can't think of the names of the films, but Disney has put out a lot of films. If you don't want to see violence, don't go and watch a war film. A war film is just a cowboy film, but with people in uniforms.
I agree with you, Leigh, but it's sneaky because they put these people in, the prince with his new bride, which is also a prince, or a transgender. And it's clearly there to state their opinion. I'll take you even further. Have you watched the McCain's adverts? Because over the last 3 years, McCain's
Chips,
roasties, chips, the whole lot. And it's got absolutely potty. They're not selling chips, they're selling lifestyles. Now,
that's what advertising is about. Advertising is about selling lifestyle.
Well, it is, but this, as we keep saying, is actually on steroids. I've seen an advert now because for years they've been showing all sorts of people gathering together. But can I say small portions of the community? But they're making the whole program. The last one was so ridiculous, I had to laugh, and it was only on once. And I thought, I wonder why. Because they got one ethnic group after another. There were no average white Caucasians on the film. I think one sneaked in at the back. And the last scene, I've got to say, was wonderful. There was a vertically challenged person eating.
What do you mean? He was 6'5", like me?
Yes, exactly. The other extreme. And I thought, yeah, what's the reason for this? Well, inclusivity is the reason, of course.
Yeah.
But not only was he vertically challenged, he has something wrong with his, I don't think, hand and fingers. Anyway, he was trying to eat chips with this bad hand, and they fell off. And this I couldn't believe it. And this was the advert. Come on, Leigh, what is happening?
I have no idea. I'm going to look that advert up. I have to see that advert. But it's true. You use the word inclusivity, and we need to. You know, being gay has been a legal thing for over half a century in Britain, and in many parts of the world, it's part of life. And so we have a large gay population, and they need to be represented just as ethnic groups do, just as business people do, just as white Caucasians do, just as everybody should be included. But yes, there can be organizations that get the balance wrong, and they need to be taken to task by people like me over that to make the balance true. I think the BBC is one of the worst places for inequality within its confines in the world, and it should be taken to task, and it's taken to task. But don't forget that Disneyland and the Disney organization in the film arm of Disney has lost business very simply because the public's view has changed, and that's changed because of Netflix. And Netflix, in its own way, is very bad. If you watch a war film, it's as if there is nothing after that. There is nothing else other than war films available. If you watch a love film, a film about a romantic comedy, say a rom-com, then all that you see is, oh, there's only rom-coms being made now, and there are fewer and fewer child-friendly films being made because the marketplace doesn't demand it. So they can get it on YouTube. There's all sorts. It's just not the same marketplace anymore. And
yeah, well, that speaks volumes to where the public are, perhaps. Listen, time's gone, more than gone. I'm going to leave you with a thought, and it's a thought from Deutsche Bank in Germany. And,
Yeah.
well, yes. And they've seen how good the lockdown has been because its employees had enjoyed staying at home and still working. And when things normalize, they reckon that they're going to allow their employees to only come in 2 days a week. The rest of them, the other 3 days a week or whatever, they can stay at home. But they will have to pay a 5% tax. Why?
Well, I have to say this, and please don't take this the wrong way. This is a think tank suggestion. Deutsche Bank have probably employed them to do this, to look at this thing. There is nobody saying that this is going to happen. It's a thought process. It's a suggestion that may or may not be taken up. If it's taken up, it's shameful. If it's thrown out, it's not shameful. But again, people are allowed to have that process of suggesting it. If it's taken up, they are saying that you are better off because you stayed at home. You don't have to pay for sandwiches, you don't have to pay for travel, blah, blah, all this sort of stuff. Now, that in itself, so you have to pay more tax. Wrong, wrong, wrong. In every shape or form, that is wrong, if it happens. But what also this move suggests to me, and it's a suggestion, it's not a fact, is that more people are going to become self-employed. And the computation of tax and everything else and holiday pay and all these things will become a thing of the past. And I know one very big businessman, he's very big in all sorts of ways. He'll hate me for that. But almost every one of his employees, apart from the core of his business, are self-employed. And that works fine. But what it actually takes away is the commitment of a company to its employee. And that, again, in its own way, is a bad thing. If Deutsche Bank go ahead with this, then they should be pilloried for it. It is a disgusting, abysmal idea.
Smoke and fire springs to mind, but let's hope it doesn't in this occasion. But other thing about smoke and fire, a little bit about smoke and fire, is our eminent guardian who stands to the left of Boris, usually saying that these are the figures, and people don't believe anymore. Chris Whitty I'm referring to. He's actually said this week, you can't hug your granny. Now, I know what he means, but I'm sorry. When government starts saying, when government starts saying that, mate, you have got the dystopia absolutely there. And even the pinkos that I've been listening to this week are absolutely mad that phrase came out of his mouth. Now, perhaps it was innocent, but I'm sorry, when the government tells you don't hug your granny, where are we?
I don't think anything comes out of a politician's mouth that's innocent. I think they know exactly what they're saying. Oh, they're stupid. And to suggest that it was a good headline. What politicians do is look for headlines, because their face then appears on the front page of a newspaper or as the first story on Sky News or any other news channel. And he came up with a phrase which was a perfect headline: "Don't hug you can't hug your granny for Christmas." Well, yeah, it's you at the beginning of this program came up with the complete logic and sense of this. It's a horrible situation we're in, but hopefully things will be cured in 2 or 3 months. So we need to take on this situation, take it on the chin. I've not seen members of my family now. So a few of them a few months ago when we drove to Britain. There are other members of family we've not seen for nearly a year. My own mother has been in lockdown in her house and only speaks to people on the phone generally for the full 9.5 months. So it's awful for people. But if we don't use the other headline phrase, if we don't go and kill our granny, then hopefully in April, I think it's April, then we can start to get back to the original world. But do we want to go back to that original world? What was so good about it? What was so good about massive mortgages, debt, poisoned air, rip-offs, cons, robots? What was so good about that society?
Well, good point. The COVID has flushed things out. It's not flushed out car parks, and we're not going to talk about it this week, but next week we will, because Leigh has got real problems with parking his car. Thank you, Leigh. We'll stop there.
Very good.
Have a brilliant weekend.
Thank you very much. We will do that.